Welcome to the Transforming Trauma podcast. Transforming Trauma is presented by the Complex Trauma Training Center. I'm your host, Emily Ruth, and I'm so glad you've joined us today. Licensed mental health professionals, we warmly invite you to join our Spring 2026 NARM Therapist Training, a live online immersion into the transformative power of the NeuroAffective Relational Model. This advanced clinical training is designed specifically for those seeking to deepen their expertise in healing complex trauma while offering the accessibility of an online format. From January to August 2026, you'll be part of a supportive virtual community of learners integrating mindfulness and clinical expertise. Through 4 comprehensive modules, you'll gain specialized trauma-informed knowledge and skills to confidently and compassionately address the impacts of adverse childhood experiences and complex trauma. Together, we'll explore how to support the resolution of attachment, developmental, relational, cultural, and intergenerational trauma using a neurobiologically informed approach that promotes post-traumatic growth. Embodying professional and personal growth, you'll become a catalyst for transformation in your practice and community. Enrollment is now open for licensed psychotherapists, counselors, social workers, psychologists, and other mental health professionals, as well as graduate trainees and interns working toward licensure. Visit complextraumatrainingcenter.com to learn more and secure your spot in this online training opportunity. And now for our interview. Kelly Cook is a licensed clinical social worker and NARM-trained therapist. She earned her Master's of Social Work at the University of Utah in 2022, specializing in child welfare and trauma-informed school social work. Kelly especially loves working in multidisciplinary teams across the K-12 levels to help meet the needs of the most vulnerable and at-risk students. Kelly is grateful to have found the NARM community early in her career to help support her as a new therapist and the students and families she serves. Kelly lives in Park City, Utah with her husband and has 4 grown children. Please enjoy my conversation with Kelly Cook. All right. Kelly Cook, welcome to Transforming Trauma. I'm so delighted to have you.
Thank you for having me, Emily. I'm really honored to be here.
Yeah, we were just talking before we pressed record how we've both been looking forward to this conversation for months, so we finally get to have it.
Yes.
So, yeah, I'd love to just start by asking you, what would you like our listeners to walk away with from our conversation today?
Yeah, I've had some time to think about that, and I think what I would want listeners to come away with is just the sense of how tender children and adolescents are. And they are really one of the most vulnerable populations among us, and so susceptible to adverse childhood experiences, I think in large part because of their developing brains and their need of reliance on adults and caregivers who are often dysregulated themselves and going through their own things. And often these events occur without the consent of the child, because really a child can't consent. And and so it's just this sweetness of children and what they experience, and it's devastating. We know that what children have to do and teenagers have to do to, in some ways, disconnect from themselves when experiencing these hard, distressing moments, and often disconnecting from their hearts. I understand that it's about 1 out of 5 children and over half of teenagers report to experiencing adverse childhood experiences. And that feels daunting to me. I work with students every single day, and I hear what they tell me, and it is really hard to hear and just to think of what they are experiencing for themselves. But what I also hope for listeners to come away with is the incredible hope of healing. that can come about for these children and adolescents, that we as caregivers, as educators, as mental health providers, that we can be a huge part of that healing by creating positive spaces, positive environments to counter and buffer those adverse childhood experiences. And especially as providers, for us to have mental health providers, for us to be more familiar with trauma-informed therapy models like NARM that do such a beautiful job of understanding the impact that trauma has on these individuals, and how it can reawaken and reconnect to parts of themselves that were once lost. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's even their own hearts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm just sitting with that. Thank you. I'm feeling really touched to this energy that you're bringing, and it just seems so clear. I know listeners can't see your face, but the importance of this focus that you have working with kids and teens. You're shaping the next generation. So I'm really excited to hear you talk more about the work you're doing.
Thank you. It's an honor to get to work with these kids and families. There's not a day that goes by that I don't sit there and think what a privilege it is to have someone include me just as a small piece of their healing journey. And sometimes it's just amazing to me that they would let me in. That, often teenagers especially can be so closed, and often they are very closed to begin with. And this can feel very frightening and dysregulating to start to reconnect to parts of themselves that they've needed to disconnect from. And I just really don't take that for granted every single day, that what a gift it is for me to be able to be in a space of healing for someone that has experienced something so hard at such a young age.
Mm-hmm. So can you tell us a little bit more? So obviously you work with kids, but tell us a little bit more about your background and how you came to work with children.
Not to get too long, but I think from the time I was a little girl, I just had such a soft, tender place in my heart for the underdog. And I would go to school and I would see someone who was being left out or being bullied or being mistreated in some way. And I would come home and I would just sob to my mom. And just for context, there's 8 children in my family. I'm the last of 8. And my mom really didn't have the bandwidth probably to be the best of listeners. But in those moments, I felt completely heard and validated. And she would often ask me, what do you think you want to do? And I would, question. I don't even think I realized, I know I didn't realize at the time how impactful what that question was inviting me to do.
Yeah. She's helping you connect to your agency right away.
Exactly.
So cool.
Exactly. And, I look back at that now as an adult and I think what a great question that was to invite me into my own desire. Like what did I want to do? Yeah. How did I want to use my agency? And so I would say, well, I think I want to sit with them. I think I want to invite them. I want to talk to them. And then she'd encourage me to do that. And then she would tell me, you have such a good heart. And, I think about that and I think she encouraged me to do something that was important and not just important, but also enriching to me, that every person that I got to come in contact with, as I got older in my middle school years and high school years, each person that I got to come in contact with was just so enriching to me that I think we connected on similarities, but also our differences. And in high school, I had the opportunity to work with some students that had cognitive and developmental physical disabilities. And they had this wonderful program where students could sign up and we could push the students in their wheelchairs to their classes or carry their books while the student used their braces to get to school, to their next class. And really the impact of that on me was powerful, to witness the courage and the humanity in these kids that had to face harder things than I did to get to school and to be in school. And again, I felt like my life was so enriched by their lives. And I'm still in touch with many of them on Facebook today, where they became some of my close friends. And so I think from that, I remember taking all of those tests that tell you what you should be when you grow up. And it was always a counselor or social worker. And I remember telling my mom, gosh, it looks like I should be a social worker. And she's like, oh, sweetie, you don't want to be a social worker. That is just so depressing.
So she was wanting to protect you from
exactly.
the work.
But as time went by, my life kind of took a circuitous route to get to where I am today. I actually didn't go back to school until later on, and it was in large part because of some very influential women in my life who had done the same. And I felt like I wanted to do that someday, and it was just kind of waiting for the right moment. And in 2019, I thought, I'm just going to explore what this looks like to go back to school and to see if my brain was even going to fire again. And and sometimes it did, sometimes it didn't. I just ate it up. I loved the learning. I loved the excitement of learning about social work and especially the emphasis on marginalized, vulnerable populations. Yeah. So I went back to school in 2020 and got my master's of social work, and then just recently was able to get my licensure and obtain my LCSW.
Okay.
So while getting my hours done, but right out of school, I was given the opportunity to be a school social worker at a nearby school district in Summit County here in Utah. And they were looking for their very first social worker. And yeah, it was daunting and exciting and exhilarating and overwhelming all at once. And I jumped in because I thought, what an exciting opportunity to set a tone of what social work could look like in a school. There was quite a lot of education that needed to take place in this small rural community that was unfamiliar with what social work was and what it could offer the students and the staff and the community. And so maybe some reticence, but with a lot of patience and grace on everyone's part, we were able to implement this program. So I went from one single social worker to now having a team of social workers. And it's just been so exciting and very fulfilling on one hand, I knew I could be a steady presence for them. I knew I could offer love and a place of belonging and a place to process some of that. But in some ways, I felt ill-equipped to face some of the things that they were talking about. And it was on the heels of me losing my sister just a few months before that time, and I was going through my own grief. And so all of this was kind of coming to a head. And it was about this time that I listened to an amazing podcast that I was used to listening to, and it was called the Trauma Informed Educators Network podcast. And on it, Brad Kammer, the senior trainer of NARM, and Matthew Portell, who is the lead of the podcast, were talking. And I was just so struck by what Brad was talking about, how he was introducing this idea of a model that was specifically designed to address adverse childhood experiences. And it described the three things that typically indicate that someone has experienced adverse childhood experiences. He was describing a negative self-concept, affect dysregulation, and interpersonal disturbances. And a light bulb went off, and I thought, this is exactly what I'm noticing in the children and teenagers that I'm working with. And I thought, I need to learn more about this. I need to learn more about NARM. It seemed to just really understand in such a deep way the impact of trauma. And I also felt like I needed that for myself. I felt that during this time of deep loss for me and grief that was really unresolved for me, I found myself really needing it personally. So I looked into getting a NARM therapist for myself to start. And I found a wonderful NARM therapist who helped me gain new insights into myself and to understand what I sometimes do when in hard situations, and how I disconnected with myself sometimes out of necessity to try to heal. And it just offered me so much groundedness, which I was then able to take into my work, helping me to show up differently with the students. And then I thought, well, I absolutely need to continue with this and go to the next step and try the level 2 NARM training. So I jumped into that the following year in 2023. I was able to do that level 2 training with Brad, and it was just transformative for me. It felt healing to me personally, but also so helpful for me in the work that I was doing with the children and teenagers. So that's a little bit of my NARM journey.
Yeah. And, as I've been kind of anticipating our conversation, I'm so curious because those who are familiar with the NARM model, we talk about, agency is like this really important piece. And as you named earlier, a lot of these kids don't have consent, like there's not space for them to have consent or really to have full agency. And so I've been so curious to ask you, in your work with these kiddos, these teens and young children, How are you integrating NARM into the work? Because you've already named this really important piece about your own kind of centering and grounding, and our personal work really impacts our professional work so much. So that's obviously we can imagine that that's an important piece of it. But I'm wondering, like, practically, how are you doing this?
That's such a good question. I mean, in some ways, I do have to modify a little bit.
Yeah.
Some of the pillars, because sometimes children or teenagers just don't have the capacity to kind of work with the model the way that it's probably set up for. Mm-hmm. But what I love about NARM, and especially with teenagers, is that the inquiry, the question itself of what is it that you most want for yourself out of our time together today, is just that question alone is so impactful, because very rarely, if ever, a teenager is going to be asked that question.
Right.
And when I ask it, you can tell that they are just like, what is happening? like, this is new. This feels so new. And most of the time, they really don't know what to do with that question.
Yeah.
It's a little bit off-putting, but in the best of ways. And on one hand, they feel scared by it, but on the other hand, they're caught off guard in this way of being invited into their own agency, into this idea that what they think matters and what they want for themselves actually matters, independent of their caregivers, independent of their teachers, independent of their peers. It is specifically for them. I've had such incredible experiences with just that first pillar alone of creating this therapeutic contract that sometimes takes 2 sessions or so, just exploring, like, what is it that you are wanting for yourself? Because often their answers are behavioral, like, I want better grades, or I want to have a better relationship with my mom, or I want to have a better relationship with my friend. We're fighting a lot, and, I just don't know what to do. So a lot of times their answers are very behavioral. And what I love about NARM is that it takes it from a behavioral standpoint into an internal state, and more an embodied state, that no matter what is going on around them, that they can return to that state of what they most want for themselves. So that's probably the first way that I really enjoy using NARM.
So there's 2 things in what you just shared that I'm just holding, and I'm so curious about. So you said you're shifting, or you're kind of working with the model a little bit when you're working with kids, adolescents. There's some things you have to kind of maybe change a little bit with the model. First, what popped up to me is you said when you ask that question, it can be like, I don't know what the word was you used. Was it disarming, or was it like, it can be a
disarming.
Little, yeah, like they're like, what adult has asked me this question before? This doesn't normally happen. And it brought me back to that moment you said with your mom, when she would ask you, what do you want to do? What do you want to, I don't know. I'm just like holding the sweetness there of like, there's something that was modeled to you and you're offering it to these kiddos. I just think that's so great.
I love that. Thank you for pointing that out for me.
Yeah. And then also, just honoring their individuality, like separate from their parents, separate from their teachers, like that you're really honoring them as their own individual human. I can totally see how that would be so powerful. Yeah. So anyway, that was just what was landing for me as you were talking.
Yeah. Thank you for pointing those things out. Sometimes I think in the work we don't always see those things as clearly as when someone's hearing it for the first time. But I love that connection that, my mom planted that seed, and maybe that's one of the reasons why NARM really aligns for me, is that heart connection for me, that those moments in my life where I was able to notice that sweet sense of agency for myself as a young child, and then to kind of have it be reawakened for me as an adult, and then now to get to offer it to other teens and children. That is a sweet idea that I hadn't really thought of before. So I love that. And then, just the way that I see teenagers just feeling heard, like, I guess, again, kind of like I feeling really heard and really seen for who they are and who they want to be, is just a really tender thing. And I can see it in their eyes when they're just like, wait, what is someone asking me? I haven't had this asked to me in quite the same way, if at all. And we just kind of sit with it for a little bit. When I ask it, we take a lot of time with that. The therapeutic contract is, we're in no rush, because we really just are getting used to the new language and the new idea that this is a possibility for them. And I think it creates a sense of hope also for them, that there could be something outside of their circumstances too, that's often so hard, like in these environments of failure that they're sometimes just mired in, that it's often hard to see that there could be something else beyond that. And so when they're invited into coming to know themselves in a new way beyond their circumstances, it just is really empowering. And to see kids go from answering the question, like they would, as I'm sure I did when I was first asked the question too, learning NARM, in answering in behaviors of what we want, or in conjunction or in relation to someone else. Like, I just want my friend to be a better friend, or I just want to, have a better relationship with my friend. Having it move from that into like, well, what does that bring for you? Inviting even more curiosity. Well, if you want a better relationship with your friend, what would that bring for you if you could have that better relationship? And again, that's also a hard question for children and teens. And really, young children, this is really not a great, like that inquiry is a little too much for them. But I think with teenagers, it works quite well for them to explore. Well, that's, well, if I had a better relationship with my friend, then it might bring greater satisfaction to me in my life. And then if you had that satisfaction, what would be on the other side of that? Does that sound like something you'd want to explore? And then they might say, well, maybe it's an authenticity, or maybe it's a greater sense of myself. But again, it takes a lot of exploration to get to that more embodied place. And then to, just the other day, I was working with a young girl at the middle school, and we've been working together for several months. And she said to me, it feels like I found myself.
Mm. Mm.
And it was like a coming back to herself, because she had come to me in a very, I don't want to say, just inward state, just very turn inward and shut down state. She had had some really hard things happen at home, some abuse. She had felt bullied at school. And for her to awaken to herself was just one of the most beautiful things that I've ever gotten to witness, to see her knowing herself in a new way over, months of time of working together and connecting and disconnecting to herself. But all of it was okay.
Yeah. That's so touching. So I'm just imagining you working with these young people. And I'm wondering, what does this look like? Because you mentioned a program. There was a program that your district has. So what is it looking like for your particular situation? I'm just wondering if I can get a picture of like how you're working with these kids.
Yeah. So schools operate in a multi-tiered system of supports. And it's a tiered system that is intended to identify through sometimes screeners, or sometimes students are self-identified or identified through educators or other staff that a student might be struggling, or maybe it's identified through one of the social workers that we're seeing a child who's either acting in or acting out in the classroom, or trauma can show up, it looks different in different children, but it can be those acting in and acting out behaviors in the classroom. Like it could be disruptive behavior, throwing a desk, or as small as just shutting down. That's not small, but
but it's
less
subtle looking from the
Yes,
outside.
exactly.
So you're in contact with teachers, administrators, school people, and kind of everyone has eyes out on these kids.
Yes.
And you have a presence in the school, it sounds like, or in the district. Are you like on campus, or like how does that look?
I have an office at every building.
Okay.
And so I work on interdisciplinary teams at every school district, at every school. There is, in the particular district that I work in, there is an elementary school, a middle school, and a high school. And each of those schools has a interdisciplinary team that are multidisciplinary team of those of us who have different skill sets. We have a school psychologist that we work with. We have our social workers. We have our guidance counselors. We have our district school nurses. We have our administrators. And we work collaboratively in each school to help identify who these most at-risk, most vulnerable students are in the classroom and in the school. And once identified, we then discuss what kind of interventions would be helpful for these students. And again, it's in that tiered system. So the tier 1 includes it's where 75 to 90% of students fall, where most of the students are receiving tier 1 supports in the school. And that could be an assembly, or that could be, just a generalized like training that the whole student body might receive. And then tier 2 is 10 to 25% of students would fall into that tier 2 category. And that's where the school social workers primarily work in tier 2 and tier 3. So if it's deemed that a student is struggling either academically, emotionally, behaviorally, or due to attendance, that we would try to insert some interventions that often include the social workers to check in on the family, check in with the student and see what might be going on there, that why are they struggling in one of those 4 categories, or sometimes they're struggling in all of those ways. And that's where the social workers, we do the one-on-one therapy, and sometimes small groups. We have friendship groups, we have grief groups, we have different types of groups, social groups that we have put together to meet the needs of the students. And then if needed, so every student that is in the tier 2 has also received tier 1. And if the tier 2 supports aren't supportive enough, then we move to tier 3. And that would include maybe some outside community partners. It might include Peace House, which is an organization to offer support for women who've experienced abuse in the home, and safety places for them to go to. Might include the food pantry, if there's food insecurity, or sometimes it includes working with Department of Child Protective Services so that we can ensure that this family is getting increased supports and resources. So it just follows this tiers of support, which organizes the work, and we get to learn from everyone in their field of expertise so that we can come up with a plan that really, hopefully supports the student.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about, because you're naming like working with these families, I'm wondering if NARM is a piece of even just how you're communicating with the families, because I imagine, just from what little I know, I've spoken with a few other educators and folks who are in the education space and working with, kids that are in high risk situations. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I imagine there's some fear around, I'm not sure I want a social worker peeking into our family situation. Like, I know that there can be fear around, what the potential consequences of that might be. I don't know if that makes sense or if that's landing, but I'm wondering how you work with that, or if NARM is a piece in all of how you're interacting with the families.
I think subconsciously it probably is. I think having NARM inform my work, it probably does inform the way that I talk to parents too, just to try to create that sense of safety and what is it that you want for your child. The best work in school social work is the collaborative work that we get to do with parents, because if we can include, if a parent is not okay, their kids are not going to be okay. And if we can help support parents and caregivers in their good work that they're trying to do, and their work is so hard.
Totally.
So hard. And we can support them and give them better resources and information for them to do the job in the way that they so hope that they can do and want to do, then that's the best kind of work. And so I love that idea, and I'm going to be more conscious of it as moving forward, that that NARM really probably does inform my time with parents too.
Yeah. Because I'm just thinking, one of the things that I know is said a lot is how, it's a model that really is humanizing.
Yes.
And I know, again, like there can be concerns, like, if you see that, our home life, that things are hard, or that we're struggling, is there going to be some kind of consequence in terms of, so I just think what I've heard is that sometimes there's fear. And if the parents can't totally trust, like, what are these actually resources?
Mm-hmm.
What exactly are you proposing? And so
Yes, are
I'm
you
just
coming to take my child away?
right. I mean, that's
Yes,
that's where my mind was
yes,
going. Of
right,
like what the potential, like what would be the worst case scenario, and do I really want to let you peek into my life when things can be really challenging for parents right now? Um, and so I'm just thinking about when we're talking about the NARM model being so humanizing, I'm just imagining you in contact with these parents, and that essence of like what you're bringing, and that you're genuinely curious, that would do so much for a parent to feel like, oh, okay, they're actually wanting to help. They actually want to know what I need or what my child needs. So
for
anyway,
sure.
I just was curious if that was something that you had, tracked or whatever.
Yeah, and I think, we haven't gotten to the idea of the 50-50, but this idea in NARM that is one of the most important topics for me in NARM is that 50-50 balance of recognizing that we get to matter in the work too, as a clinician and as a therapist, that we are bringing our own lived experience into the room, and that we get to matter too. And we must matter, really, like we have to matter in order to do the work the way that it's needed and intended to be, is for us to be a human coming in to the work. And if my balance is off, then I need to adjust. I need to think about that while in session with a student, and take care of that and be aware of what's coming up for me, which is some of that countertransference too. And being a middle-aged woman working in schools, I have a lot of countertransference that I have to watch. I have this motherly instinct that I just want to fix and protect and rescue some of these kids and stick them in my pocket and take them home,
Yeah.
and, ethically, I guess I can't do that. But I just, that 50-50 balance of coming into session, and that both people get to matter equally in this partnership, and we get to both show up in our own humanity, is really important, which then ties into what you're saying with parents too. As I'm working with parents, that I do get to remind them that their needs matter too. I think sometimes as parents, we give, and there's nothing left to give. And parents need to take care of their own needs. It's kind of like putting on that gas mask in an airplane first before you take care of your child sitting next to you. It's just the same in a home.
Yeah.
Where giving parents the permission to care for themselves, and that their needs are of the utmost importance in a home, that will help the relationship that they have with their child. So I do remind parents of that often, of that critical need to give to themselves first, so that they can, have something left to give.
Beautiful. Yeah, I'm just thinking what a gift that is, I'm sure, to parents who, again, who could potentially be feeling judged, or some kind of way about, a system outside of them, their family sort of
Yeah,
imposing, how can we
sure.
fix this situation that could feel like that? And that you're communicating, again, with maybe some NARM language or terminology, but like giving them this concept of like, your needs really matter too. Let's look
Yeah.
at what you need. And that's
And
so
that we're in it
beautiful.
together too. I mean,
Yeah.
we're collaborating. I'm not coming in as the expert of
Yeah.
their children's lives. Like, they get to tell me, like, tell me what you want for me to know about your child. What would you like for me to know?
Yeah.
And that they're, they live with their child 24/7. They know them well, and they may not always have the resources or be well equipped to follow through, and they might need some of those extra resources, but they want good things for I've never met a parent that doesn't want good things for their child. They may not have the capacity
Mm-hmm.
to do it in a way that they would like, but parents are well-intended by and large. Yeah. And so I'm not trying to come in and act like I'm this, expert into their own children's lives, but just to offer support where they meet them where they are, and that we're going to collaborate together, and that they're not alone in this work that we're going to do together to help support their child.
I love that. There was something else you said a little bit earlier. I was just kind of tracking. So when you first started this job, it was you. It was just, you were a soul. It was just you.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking, now you have a team. So I'm just thinking about this piece of like, it wasn't sustainable, I imagine, to do it all on your own. And I'm curious if you reaching out for resources, like, I can't do this all on my own. I need a team. Like, even there's agency even there. I'm just, holding that.
Yes. Yeah. That was a very pivotal time for me. I was into my first year and halfway through and feeling overwhelmed, and I loved the work, but it wasn't sustainable to do by myself. So I recognized the need to advocate for myself with some people who could make some of those important decisions. And I was very grateful that they recognized the work that I was doing and that it had impact. We were collecting data, monthly data and quarterly data, to determine what it was, the impact that social work that I was having on the district, that I was doing, so many suicide assessments, or so many sessions, or so many, I was just tracking the data as we could, so that the district could know what it was that I was bringing to the table, and that I was one person for an entire district, and we needed at least another person to share the load. And so I was very grateful that they signed on to funding an additional person, another full-time person, in addition to paying for my NARM training.
Wow.
So this all kind of happened about the same time.
Amazing.
And I was extremely grateful and felt very validated that the work that I was doing was impactful, meaningful, and that I shared with them a lot of information about NARM and how it was specifically designed to address adverse childhood experiences, and that the community had been going through a lot of those experiences, not just as students, but just as a community. They were reeling from some suicides that had happened prior to me arriving, and they needed collective healing and some intergenerational issues, like unprocessed, unresolved trauma that I was hearing about through individuals and families. And so the model just fit in so nicely. And I was able to describe that to those making the decisions of if we could, move forward with that training. And I just am so grateful that they saw the need and met it with the ability for me to get that training, and also we now have a team. We have we have 2 full-time social workers, and we have students as well that are in their master's getting their hours, and they work with us.
Like an internship?
And we have 4 different students working with us right now. So
great.
It's just been amazing to have that kind of support.
Wow. I just have goosebumps just like thinking about the change. And my next question was actually going to be, and I know we want to protect confidentiality and we're not asking like for specific stories, but my next question was going to be like, can you share, is there anything that feels appropriate to share in terms of this process that, you might have found inspirational for yourself? I mean, but you just sharing that feels like inspirational, just the idea of you going to the district and saying, listen, there has been some trauma here collectively that the community needs to have, a wound here that we need to look at, and that you advocated to get this training so that you can build this program and this support system. I'm so inspired right now. I'm really appreciating you sharing that. Is there anything in conjunction with that or anything else that you'd like to share that has been important?
I think just the gratitude for the work itself, for the work of being a small piece of people's lives. I just don't take that for granted ever, that I, get to be on the path of healing with these amazing students and their families. I mean, it does feel like a family, that we're healing as a family and healing as a community. And so I appreciate just the staff so much. The staff have been incredible to work with, and incredibly welcoming to the work, to having social work come into the district. And, again, it's been a process, and but overall, it's just been a really beautiful thing to witness this new support and intervention come into a really special community that deserved to have some extra support.
Yeah. I'm feeling that land in my heart. It's so special. Oh, Kelly, I feel like I could talk to you for hours. I want to hear all the things. But I'm wondering, if there's any way that, folks want to reach out in terms of, maybe they're in a situation like what you were in before. Maybe they're a solo situation and they're wanting to know how others have done it. How might others reach out to you or get in touch with you?
Yeah, I think just through my work email,
Okay.
kelly.cook@ssummit.org.
Great.
Yeah,
I'll have to
of
put those in the show notes so that folks can reach out if they're wanting some I don't know, connection in terms of this work that you're doing. I know it's unique in many ways. And also I love how you said it. It's like we're healing as a family, like a human family. And I know that there's many others working in educational spaces and school systems that are probably navigating some similar things. So I appreciate you sharing your story with us and with our community. And
thank you. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you, and thanks for making it such a welcoming space for me where I could feel like I can just show up as myself. So I really appreciate that, Emily.
Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate you and the work you're doing. And I really am. I'm looking forward to staying in connection with you and just following your journey. This has been so inspirational. And I'm not too far from you. So next time I'm in town, I'm going to reach out.
Go on a hike.
Have lunch. Go on a hike. I love it.
I love it.
I love it. Thank you, Kelly.
Emily.
Thanks so much for joining us for today's episode. To find more information about our guest, check the show notes or visit us at complextraumatrainingcenter.com/transforming trauma. You can also connect with us in other ways. We are on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. As a mental health professional, your commitment to healing and growth inspires us. We at the Complex Trauma Training Center are committed to supporting you in your well-being and success. That's why we are honored to invite you to our Space Program 2026, an inner development program of support and self-discovery for therapists on the personal, interpersonal, and transpersonal levels. Running over 6 online sessions in 2026, this interactive experiential learning program is designed to support self-care and self-discovery for therapists exploring internally, relationally, and transpersonally. CTTC faculty will welcome you into a professional community of therapists that are seeking to create greater effectiveness and resilience in our professional lives. As CTTC faculty Brad Kammer says, the intent is that this program will help us not only become more effective therapists, but also love our work more. Please visit complextraumatrainingcenter.com and secure your spot in the 2026 Space Program. Thanks to Rig for producing and editing, to Tori Essex for our album art, and to Brad Kammer for the creation of this podcast. We look forward to building community and connection with you and changing the world by transforming trauma.